Eyes on Longmont, offering a diversity of topics about our community that will inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy this edition of Eyes on Longmont.
My name's Caroline McLean, and I'm a Boulder photographer, and this is my home studio gallery, and I'd love to have you come in and see some of my work. Well, thank you so much. My name's Caroline McLean. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, and I'm a fine art photographer. Let's see. It was about 6 years ago that my sister died suddenly, and that was my kind of segue into photography in a deep way. As a kid, I grew up and was very passionate about photography. I have a photograph of a bridge that I took, and it was being in the darkroom that really got me excited about photography. And I just loved watching the image appear in the solution. That was just so exciting. And so photography and art have always been with me. I did a lot of art and painting in high school. And then I was teaching school up in Aspen in the 80s. And I got back into photography and had a ball in that darkroom while I was teaching school. And then again, I didn't have access to a darkroom. So after my mom died in, 2005, my husband gave me an digital SLR camera. And that was like, wow, I mean, I didn't know what to do with it. And then when my sister died in 2006, I just started walking the hills and taking photos, and it was really the beginning of leaning into my photography and the beginning of a path, a journey, and a healing process. And my photography's really been that for me and continues to be that. So I have this picture that I took of a black and white picture of a bridge that I took when I was in 7th grade. And then I also have a picture of this mountain lion. I live up against the foothills, and we had some mountain lion issues back in about 2005 in the neighborhood. And my neighbor called me and said, "We have mountain lion kittens in the backyard." And so I went over with my digital camera and didn't know what I was doing. But I got some great photos of this mountain lion kitten, and then it was like I started sharing it with everybody, and then all of a sudden it was on like the evening news, and Division of Wildlife had it, and the whole thing went viral. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool, but I had no idea what I had done. And that was very, to have some kind of success like that was very encouraging to continue. So I'd say that was a really pivotal time, was that mountain lion photograph and my sister dying. So my background, I have a master's degree in biology, and I did my master's on Boulder Creek stream banks. And then I worked as a wetlands biologist for the state for a number of years. and I ran environmental education programs for kids. And so being outdoors has always been a big part of my life. And it continues to be, and that the earth, nature is really quite amazing inspiration for me. It's a place I go when I'm feeling sad, or I just want to just calm my nervous system. And it's also a place that inspires me. It's such a great metaphor for life, because it's just life in action all the time. And so my photographies and my meditation practice really have kind of worked together towards developing my imagery. So thank you for being here. It's my friend Lola. She's known me since I was in high school, and she has some questions, so we're going to have a conversation.
Great. So you've talked a lot about your inspirations, and tell me a little bit about the equipment you use now and how that's maybe evolved.
Yeah, as far as my equipment goes, as I said, my husband had given me my first digital SLR, and he didn't really know what he was buying, and I had problems with it, and I didn't know what I was doing, but finally we realized it wasn't working right. And then after my sister died, I was like, I'm getting a good camera, so I went out and bought myself a Canon Rebel digital SLR. And Canon is a great camera company, and I pretty much, once you commit yourself to a camera brand, it's best to stick with that brand because you understand how it works, and these equipment has gotten so complicated. So I've been primarily a Canon shooter, and having a good lens is really important. And I found I'm a fairly small person, so big lenses are heavy. And then sometimes you don't want to carry the camera with you. And as I've progressed with my photography, I realized it's really more about the me as the artist rather than the equipment. And I've started to lighten up on my equipment quite a bit. So I still have my SLR and a variety of lenses, but I've really gotten into more of my point and shoot camera. I do have, right now this is a Sony. It has a great glass on it, great lens. And it's really easy for me to carry. So when I'm hiking or biking, I can carry it in my purse. And it's a great little camera to have.
And you can still work with a lot of adjustments with this camera. It's not just automatic, it's got all the same.
This has more adjustments than I know what to do with.
Yeah.
As I've gotten into my photography, I realize I'm not a real technical person. And then, you know, I have a friend who's an iPhone photographer. She's awesome. Her work blows me away. Her name's Karen Devine. And I've started taking classes with her. And this new iPhone 6 has an awesome camera on it. And so, again, it's really more about the photographer's eye and composition, right. And the camera is the camera that you have with you. You know, you can't be a good photographer if you don't have a camera. So, and sometimes it's a matter of seeing something and being able to take that photograph right then and there. So, you know, carrying your camera is my first kind of rule. If you want to be a photographer, always carry a camera.
And based on that, do you end up doing a lot of editing in Photoshop or in some program on the computer, or do you find that?
Yeah, you know, I really much prefer to be outdoors, and this technology is getting so complicated that I figured out my little photo management on Aperture, which is what I started on, which is an Apple program. Lightroom is comparable, and Aperture's now gone away, so Lightroom's really your only choice, because with digital imagery you take so many images. I take a lot of bad pictures, just to let you know. And You take so many images, you got to figure out how to manage them
Right.
and catalog them.
And delete's a great
And-
tool, isn't
and-
it?
And delete's an important tool. But I have Photoshop, but I just never really got a grasp of Photoshop. So I do your basic editing, which is to maybe pop the contrast a little bit, crop my image, sharpen it a little bit, but I don't spend a lot of time editing.
And I think as you develop your eye, you're more selective in what you take, so that decreases your time, may decrease your time on the computer
Right,
or editing.
right.
Develop
And
your
again, you know, for me, it's not necessarily the product, the photograph. It's really the process for me.
eye. Okay.
Because when I'm out in nature and I'm with my camera, it's like my segue. The camera is the tool to slow me down, to really sink into nature, to breathe deeply, to calm myself, and to just wonder like a child, and just to look at things really closely. So I can be, it's kind of like a treasure hunt sometimes, or it gives me, it's like I can go out for a walk and just appreciate. You know, it's just like I can look at the clouds and just love the clouds and appreciate the way the light comes through the trees.
So that then your camera is a tool to record that experience.
Yeah, it's to really have that kind of drops me into having kind of a healing experience, connecting with my own creativity, and then, you know, when I am receptive like that and really present to the moment, I feel like that's when my image shows up.
Right.
You know, and
So that's your goal of through taking these photographs is to enhance that process?
and to connect to my own creativity, and to I think it makes me a better person in a lot of ways, because it calms me down, and I'm better at listening, and I'm better at just receiving, and you know, it gives me a lot of gratitude and appreciation, and I feel like, you know, that's important in this world. And it's interesting with photography, a lot of the famous photographers, Minor White's one, he worked with Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams is quite a, I just jumped, excuse me.
It's okay.
Ansel Adams is definitely an inspiration for me. He's amazing at how he followed his heart and the beauty of the world, and he really brought wilderness to us with his images, and was such a inspiration for the Wilderness Act and for helping us preserve big open parcels of land through his images. And then a student and colleague of his, Minor White, they worked together in San Francisco at the Art Institute after World War II, and Minor White was really big about connecting to spirit, that when you are receptive and open, then the image comes to you. And I really find for myself that's true. So I don't so much pre-visualize and decide that I'm going to be at a certain place at a certain time. I'm kind of more on a journey, paying attention. And
who were some of your other photographic inspirations? Were they, are most of them related to, did most of them take nature photographs, or I know nature really ties into your photographs, but what other influences and teachers were there?
Well, Ansel Adams is just awesome, and Minor White. And I would highly recommend other people, if you're interested in photography, is really study those two. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche has been a big inspiration in my life, and he started the Naropa Institute and the Shambhala Community Centers. And through the Shambhala Centers, I started meditating, and I learned about meditation and quieting the mind. And with meditation, it helps you become present to the moment. And photography does a lot of that too. I become present to the moment because I forget about the past, I forget about the future, and I'm just present. And Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche started, he talked about the creative arts, and he actually has a book about perception. And he's a deceased Tibetan Buddhist master, but he wrote this book about true perception called The Path of the Dharma Arts. And there's a program called Meek Song, which is the good eye, and it's really teaching people how to wake up to the moment. In Boulder, Michael Wood has carried on that legacy and teaches Meek Song. And, that's definitely gave me permission to follow what I thought was beautiful and to continue to do that. And then I take the Meek Song and that present moment into nature. And my background as a biologist is also another way in which I've developed looking at nature up close and personal.
And it seems like that's been a wonderful mix for you to bring those two together. And it seems like most of your photographs are related more to nature than maybe like a Stieglitz urban scene.
Right. I do admire, though, like Irving Penn and Richard Avedon. I also like to study a lot of artists. I love George O'Keeffe, and the Impressionist artists, Gauguin, Van Gogh, Matisse, and then you got Picasso and Andy Warhol. He was kind of a crazy guy.
Yeah, good out there.
I was just down at the Denver Art Museum, and I went through the Wyeth show, and it was fabulous. So my painting background really helps too with composition, color, and it's kind of curious. I'm not doing that much color photography right now. But studying art, I think, has really also played into that. And I must thank my mom for encouraging art growing up. She was really my inspiration for nature and love of nature and sense of wonder. She gave us a real solid background in appreciating the world and being curious. Let's see, other people. Sally Mann is an awesome photographer. Robert Adams, I love his work. He was actually a professor at Colorado College in, I think, the English department in the 60s, and he started going out with his camera and taking pictures of these new developments across the West in the Colorado Springs area. He was in the Boulder County area too for a while, and then he went to the Northwest. But he has these kind of stark, kind of frightening images of these landscapes, these urban landscapes, that give you kind of a sense of loneliness almost as these subdivisions were popping up.
I noticed that most of your photographs are black and white. Is there a reason for that, or is there a...
Well, in some ways, yes. With a color photograph, you have to calibrate your computer and your printer and get all this technical stuff together. Because when I take photographs, I also print all the way to the end. But I actually got into black and white. I found converting my color images to black and white was pretty simple. Mm-hmm. And I started in the darkroom with black and white, and maybe I see better in black and white. But I do shoot in color, and then I convert to black and white, and I do use a software program, Silver Effects Pro. It's very easy to use. And I won a national photo competition with a black and white photo that I took. And it's a picture of Mount Crested Butte with a big snowdrop in the middle of the Slate River. And I came in second place with that competition. And because I also spend a lot of time in Crested Butte, Colorado, which is a stunning, beautiful, God's country mountain town, and I take a lot of pictures from that part of Colorado, I noticed nobody was doing black and white. And I wanted to get into a gallery. I wanted to get my work out there. And so I thought, well, I didn't want to compete with the local photographers, and nobody was doing black and white, so I started leaning into black and white.
Okay.
And I've really enjoyed the crispness, the tonal range, the sharpness of black and white images. So I've really leaned into my black and white and felt like, you know, there's so many avenues and ways that you can go with your photography. And I found that I really like black and white, and I found that I really like nature, and those are passions, so I leaned into them.
Because I look at this and I think about Ansel Adams photographs, and I think of Edward Weston and all the people that have also done black and white, and it's a different presentation of, but it presents a lot of contrast and a lot of wonderful different way than a color photograph of nature. So it seems like it seems like you've really started to capture a lot of nature just through the black and white. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
I also feel like
image.
perhaps it brings out more emotion, more feeling. It also makes you want to like lean into the photograph a little bit more to see the detail. Like with this picture of the shaggy parasol. Again, I was just walking in the woods, and all of a sudden I saw these broken, this clump of mushrooms, and one was broken and flipped over, and I just leaned into it, and you can see the gills and the composition, or the incredible beauty of these mushrooms, and I just leaned in and took the photograph, and there it was.
So that a photograph doesn't have to be a beautiful thing for you. It's an expression of process of life, it seems.
Yes,
frequently.
Exactly. And again, I use nature as my metaphor for life, and it's my inspiration. So I've had a fair amount of pain and suffering and grief and loss in my life, and this gives me hope and beauty because of all the loss that I've had in my life. Like here's a photograph of it's a group of feathers, again intermixed with kind of dead and dying leaves, but you know, it just really jumped out at me, and I love. It's amazing, you know, the beauty of the birds and the feathers and the trees, and I'm just in love with nature.
And I know that there's a new thing you've been doing with coloring your photographs, very subtly. Is there a new phase? Is there a new trend for you in that, or a new expression of that, and what might that be?
Yes. So as this journey and this path of photography unfolds, I decided I wanted to do more portfolio work and work with the high idea of developing a story, and or that photography is a visual communications. And so with portfolio work, I did some reviews this past April, and I presented 2 portfolios. One was of Bluebell Creek, which flooded big time through the neighborhood and devastated our neighborhood. And then the other one was of dying, wilted flowers in the neighborhood. So I actually had an old Labrador, and after the flood, it really became impossible for him to hike on the trails because they were all washed out. So we started just walking really slowly through the neighborhood, and he really helped me slow down more. And I just started noticing how beautiful these flowers were. My neighbors do an amazing job with their flower beds, and the floods were in September, October, and so the flowers were beginning to wilt and fade, as was my dog, and yet they were beautiful. They were just really elegant, and I started really leaning into these flowers and capturing that elegance. So I started taking pictures of these faded flowers in the neighborhood, and sometimes they had water droplets on them, or they were droopy, or there'd be a group of them. It'd be like three old sisters together or something, and I just identified with them, maybe because I'm getting older. So I printed these photographs out, and then I started playing with color, and I would, on a rainy day, I'd sit at my kitchen table and I'd start coloring these flowers. And what was great was photography can be very expensive. And, I do show, I'm an open studios artist, and I have several hundred people come through my house every year. And selling is not a priority, but it does help because it's expensive. And also, I want people to enjoy my work. But the photography is really about my healing, my process, and then teaching others. But the coloring was really fun, and then it's a one-of-a-kind type image, which then gives it more value and more interest, people like that. So I did a whole series of colored flowers, and then I decided, well, let's explore this coloring a little bit more. So then I started hand coloring more, and then so I'm exploring this whole series of hand coloring. Again, I've been reviewed, and here I have a picture of a cloudscape, and these are some these are gentian flowers that stick up. They bolt once in their lifetime. And people just love these new images that I'm creating. Or I did a series, I went to a cutting horse show in Crested Butte this past summer, and I did a whole series of spurs and cowboy boots and horses and chaps, and hand colored them. And so that's been kind of fun. And again, it is another kind of very peaceful and calming and relaxing process that I listen to this bilateral nature music, and it just kind of allows me to, again, receive and drop in. And this summer, I've actually proposed to teach some classes just like that. It's coloring, tea, coloring, and dropping into your own creativity. Because I'm a real believer that creativity shows up when you get out of your own way, when you open yourself up to receptivity. Recently, my husband and I were watching a movie about Keith Richards, who was
great.
He's the lead guitarist of the Rolling Stones, and he was talking. He's sitting at the piano, an amazing artist, and he's sitting at the piano and he's talking about how, I just kind of play on the piano and the music just comes to me. It's not like I'm searching for it. It's not like I'm grasping for it. It just like comes to me. And I kind of believe that that's kind of similar, that I really try to work at getting myself out of the way and allow the image to come to me.
Well, I've had the privilege of knowing you for a while, and it's been wonderful to watch your development and watch kind of how your photographs have evolved, and you've explored different techniques and things. And then like this one here, she's got a photograph of a beach in Mexico, I believe, from recently.
Yeah.
And so it's been wonderful to watch how that process has evolved, and you've explored new techniques and put them in your portfolio or exploration work. So I'm wondering what is a good photograph to you?
I like simplicity. You know, what's a good photograph to me? Cleanliness, sharpness, simplicity, good subject. I like photographs that I like because they might say something to me that somebody else may not like at all. But
So you don't worry about receptivity of how others see it. It's still very much of a self-expression
yeah,
type thing. And
yeah, and I really feel like that, you know, nobody's going to see like I do or like you because we're all individuals, and it's all this process of connecting to your own creativity and then being able to express that.
and when that's true, I think that is expressed to others then, and
people
respond.
get it. Yeah, people respond and get it. So again, I take a lot of lousy photos along the way. But what I'm finding is, it's like, so I do this and it makes me feel good because, you know, it helps me get through another death or another whatever it might be that's come up in my family. But it's been a really amazing healing process, and nature and creativity, and I feel like it's something that I want to share. So that's why I do more teaching. I'm interested in teaching and taking people to Crested Butte and going out hiking, and it feeds back into when I was younger and I'd take kids out on environmental ed trips. You know, again, it's so much fun to get people to really get down on their hands and knees and explore and go, wow, you know, and that appreciation because this planet that we live on is becoming smaller and smaller, it seems like. And I have this really core belief that what we do to ourselves, we do to the earth. And what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. And that core belief is that when we really disregard and not take care of our Mother Earth, then it comes back and we're not taking care of ourselves. And that it's learning about how to nurture ourselves and take care of ourselves. And I think that's something we all, I know most women, you know, we all have issues with self-nurturing. And that this has been a way that I've learned how to make myself a nicer person, to be a better mother, to be, I think, a better friend, to be an example of being gentle and kind.
So teaching photography may be a technique for helping others experience and
them to connect to their own truths and to their own selves. Yeah. So I do lead women's groups in Crested Butte, and I help people look at their world through different eyes. So I have a photograph here of looking up at some cottonwoods, and it's like I'm lying on my back looking straight up. And I have exercises where I have, here's one, where this man is holding a cardboard card, and it has like a little 2x3 cut in it, and he's holding it and using it as another way to look and to perceive and to see things that he normally wouldn't see. And that's what I work at, seeing these beautiful things that people walk by every day and don't see because they've become numb to what their world is around them.
so those are some of the things you encourage people to notice through your teaching
Yeah.
of photography?
Yeah.
And using the camera as a tool to do that?
Yep. Yeah.
What is creativity to you?
Oh boy, that's a
That's a big one, isn't it?
that's a big one. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think it is that process of getting my own ego or mind out of the way and then being able to be an open channel to what might come in.
So that's what you want to help teach others to do.
And connect with themselves. And then, I'm doing a lot of work with the iPhone right now. I have this teacher, Karen Devine, who her work blows me away. She started on Photoshop and doing all this collage work, but now she does it on the phone, and it's amazing what you can do on the phone. And this has been a real fun new thing where I take images that I like with my camera, with my phone, and then I start to overlay them and see what comes out of it. And then it speaks to me on a whole completely different level about my heart, what I care for, my values. And it's really a unique process, and it's a lot of fun to play with.
What I notice is that you are really open to new ideas and explorations, and when you're inspired by something, you go for it, and so that you've been exploring all sorts of things through your photography and being open to exploring new possibilities and wanting to share that with others.
Yeah, and again, it's all a journey, and there's some times where I feel really uninspired, and I know that I have to kind of wade through that process, and something new will come along and inspire me, and that's part of maybe the shadow side of all the inspiration, that it does. You gotta have to go. It's like rolling hills. It ebbs and flows, but overall, I can just go walk out in nature and then just feel all good about everything. So, I do have a small company that I call OB Joyful Journeys, and it's taking people out in nature and teaching classes, and I just love the name OB Joyful. OB Joyful is a wilderness area in Crested Butte, Colorado, and that Crested Butte is a beautiful place. It's God's country. It is so beautiful, and so that OB Joyful Journeys is more almost kind of my intention into the world, is how I want to be in the world, and it shows up through my photography.
So you've got some classes that you're offering this summer in Crested Butte, or?
Yeah, I taught some classes last year through the Art Center, and right now I have some classes that are being reviewed through the Crested Butte Wildflower Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I'll have a group of women up on retreat at the end of July.
And I know you've also taught, is it in the Boulder Valley school systems you've taught kids, or what other teaching have you done?
I taught 3 or 4 years at Horizons Middle School, and then I recently, as an Open Studios artist, I did teach a couple classes at Fairview.
And are you more interested in teaching kids or women's groups or spiritual groups? Do you have a clientele that you want to?
I'm working on that. I was going to teach at a couple, like continuing ed. I was working on some classes, and then we had I had another kind of family crisis that kind of put everything on hold for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 2016's already like booked. It's kind of amazing.
Great. With what kind of things?
Well, for one thing, my daughter's graduating from high school, so I'm going to launch her. She's my last child at home, and I got Open Studios. It'll probably, I'm sure it'll be my 3rd year as an Open Studios artist, and I'm actually doing an 8-month-long yoga teacher training program, which I think will open me up even more to my creativity.
And you take your camera along to all these activities?
Oh, I always have a camera. Because I got my phone. Always have a camera. So
it's amazing what the progression has been over the years of
creating
creating opportunities for us to use our cameras. And
yeah, it is. So,
are you a photographer or an artist or both?
Well, I guess I'm both, but I feel like I am moving more into being more of an artist and opening myself up to creativity. Because when I teach these classes on how to perceive and look, I did some at the Boulder Arts Association, and I was getting artists coming to my classes.
So the camera is one tool, but you're also using other mediums in your teaching
Yeah, we
too?
do some deep breathing. It's connecting with self. It's a variety of different perception activities. It's slowing down and looking like slow art. I'm big into this whole slow art where you can go to, let's say, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and you're there for a few days, and you can spend 3 days just going through the museum. Most likely you have an afternoon at the museum. And it's like, do you want to see everything? Or do you really want to connect with maybe a few things? You know, so that seeing everything is like kind of almost like fast food or something to me, where I'm really encouraging people to slow down, to really look at a few images and really spend time with that image.
And I know you've been a part of some photography groups and gone to a lot of different photography exhibits and things. What are some of the organizations you've been involved with over the years?
Well, Flatiron's Photo Club, you know, the photo clubs are great, very supportive, a lot of fun, great way to start putting your work out and getting feedback on your work. And then I've been involved with the Colorado Photographic Art, Colorado Photographic Arts Center. It's CPAC, and that's down in Denver. They have a lot of classes, and then there's also the Center for Fine Art Photography in Fort Collins, which is an awesome group, and they always have exhibits and competitions, and I take classes to learn how to connect to my personal vision, about how to prepare for portfolio reviews. So there's awesome resources in the area, and I'm just so appreciative of all those people.
And is it Longmont that had a Weston exhibit, and they've had some other photography exhibits?
Yeah, Longmont has a lot, and I need to explore way more in Longmont. There's like the Firehouse Museum, and they did host an awesome Weston exhibit, and I feel guilty. I need to get up here in Longmont a little bit more.
And then also Foothills Art Center in Golden is another.
Yeah, and you know, again, it's just time. You know, I got to explore there, the Arvada Center.
There's an incredible wealth of opportunities, aren't there?
Yeah. So, right now I do have some images in the Valona Gallery on Pearl Street, and then I have some images at the Rijks Gallery in Crested Butte.
Great.
And those are more landscape type shots. So, but I am so thankful to have you as my friend and be here with you today.
Just in a kind of a futuristic broadcast, imagine 10 years from now, do you have any ideas of what you want to be doing, or are you worried about that, or is that something you think about in your process?
Well, I want to learn how to walk on water.
Cool.
Yeah, I just want to, you know, continue. I think I'll just continue with just appreciating. I really, maybe down the road, I might end up doing more portraiture. And just, you know, I keep thinking as my husband's getting closer to retirement, that maybe we'd like to, you know, do some traveling and maybe do some service work. You know, I was looking through some of my journals, because I journal all the time, and I was looking through my journals, and I had this thought about taking photographs of people who work in the outdoors. My mom was a horsewoman, and I have a picture of her here of right before she died, and she was an amazing woman and an amazing teacher. And it's just, It's a great picture of
That's
my
a great
mom.
photograph.
So there's horses going off in the distance, and I did not take this photograph, but it just really captures my mom for who she was, and that, you know, people adored her. She was really genuine. And so I keep thinking that doing a series of people who've worked outside all their lives, you know, like cow women or cowboys or,
Right.
or biologists or horticulturists or people who've really gotten their hands dirty in nature. And I keep thinking that would be kind of fun. Or, you know, again, if you travel, we're removed so far from nature, but, you know, you go to less wealthy countries and people are still really working the soils and getting dirt in under their fingernails. And
So that might be a wonderful
So-
theme to explore
yeah,
if you're traveling
and
more.
connecting,
Even,
you know, the whole idea about connecting into the soul of the human, you know, or the God in the other.
and I think the cowboy picked some of those rodeo pictures kind of tied into that concept for me. He was like, ooh, look at this
Yeah,
lifestyle and how that is connected to the earth and is connected to your past,
Yeah.
and that's an expression.
and as people get older, and if they work outside all the time, they get really wrinkly, and every wrinkle tells a story, and so you know, that was just like being able to connect to people on a deeper level.
Just wondering if there's anything else in closing you want to say about your journey and your connection with photography and nature.
Well, I want to say, you know, to, let's say, people who are listening to this, you know, trust your heart, listening to your truth, that you can do it too. That it's not, you know, it's listening. And, you know, I'm just really appreciative that you're interested, and want to thank everybody who's been part of this. And again, I am just really appreciative of the good fortune in so many ways I've had. And I feel like the more I appreciate, the more the world appreciates back. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Caroline, and welcome to my home and my makeshift gallery. In October, I've been an open studios artist, and people come to my home and see my work and see where I work out of. And my office is a very small little office with 2 computers, and I really think of my studio as being outdoors, and I'm right up against the foothills in Boulder, and it's just beautiful where I'm located. Again, in October, I completely transformed my home into a gallery, and so these are some of the images that I have up. To my right, this is called a lamb's ears, and I shot this just up the street in my neighbor's yard. It was probably February, and lamb's ears is a very fuzzy, soft, kind of blue-green plant, yard plant. And this lamb's ears has been frozen and has just fallen over, and I just found it very rich in texture. And then what I did is I printed it in black and white, and I then hand colored it. And it just really pops out the detail of the leaves and kind of the furry feel of the leaves. This image is Water and Ice, and I actually won an award through the county with this image. And it was on Boulder Creek. And it's a fairly slow shutter speed, so you can see the movement of water under this piece of ice. And if you've never been down to Boulder Creek or to a place where water's moving and ice forms, and make sure that you're safe, don't go out on thin ice, but the ice formations are absolutely exquisite and really fun to explore. So that's Water and Ice. And then this last one over here is a datura, which again is in my neighbor's yard. And it was after, it was actually probably during the floods when it was rainy, because there's water droplets on this datura. And I, again, printed in black and white and then hand colored it. And I do have a whole series of these hand colored flowers right now in the Bologna Gallery on Pearl Street. This photograph I call Homestead Rocks, because it's actually up by a homestead in Boulder open space, and it was taken in the spring. This is choke cherry that's blooming, and the rocks are still exposed. And I don't know, I just really love the softness and the texture and the mystery of this photograph. It's really fascinating to me, as I've walked up by these rocks before and I cannot seem to relocate that image. So I guess it just spoke to me at that moment. And this one was taken after the floods. We had incredible mushroom blooms. This is a shaggy parasol. And as a biologist, I just love the detail, and there's the really dense gills and the nubs on the cap, and just the amazing structure that's all around us all the time is fascinating to me. So when I present my work in open studios, I've collected a lot of different quotes from different artists and photographers, and to help guide people through this kind of contemplative nature photography experience that I create. And I'm just reading through one of my quotes, and it reminds me of this photograph of the feather. And it's, to me, photography is the art of observation. It's about finding something interesting in an ordinary place. I found it has little to do with the things you see and everything to do with the way you see them. And that was a quote from Elliot Erwitt. This photograph has a specific quote that goes with it every open studios. And it's, no matter how slow the film, spirit always stands still long enough for the photographer it has chosen. And that's by Minor White. And this photograph is of the Alps, and it's like the frothy sea, it looks like. And my family and I were coming back from Europe. We'd just gotten on the airplane. We were just flying out of Milan, and all of a sudden I had the window seat, and I'm like scrambling to get my camera out of its case. And I took this photograph through the airplane window. And that's the Alps. So again, that's like through an airplane window. It's pretty amazing that I could get that kind of detail. So over here, I have both of these are award-winning images. This is a national award. This is in Crested Butte. And I love the simplicity and the elegance of the leading line of the snow along the river, and then that just marshmallow snow pile. And this is in Boulder. And again, that was one day I dropped my kids off to school, and it was just this foggy, beautiful, kind of misty, eerie kind of day. And it just, the energy and the atmosphere and outside got me very excited. And I just grabbed my camera and just started to explore different areas and came up with that. This image is also a Crested Butte image. That's Mount Teocalli, and this is the East River drainage. And this is a very popular image. And it was a day that I was skiing on the mountain at Crested Butte, and I had brought a big camera with me. And I came around on the catwalk, and I just saw this image, and I just stopped and pulled my camera out and took it. I love just the leading curl, the line, the S curve, and it almost looks like a pen and ink. And there's just so much variation in the snow. And I took that a couple years ago, and I've really found it quite fascinating, because every year I'm over in Crested Butte and I'm looking for that image, and it's different every time. Then these other ones are, I love trees and I love seeing things in trees. The upper cottonwoods looking up, you know, I was literally on my back taking that photograph, and just love that kind of reaching towards the sky image. This middle one is also cottonwoods in my neighbor's yard, and I was just out walking, and just I love the kind of the dancing of the arms of the cottonwood. And then the last one, the luminous ponderosa, that was taken on a very cold, chilly winter day when hoarfrost had actually developed on the needles, and it actually kind of pops the ponderosa. It's been a great joy. Thank you for coming.